Good point. You have a point. That's the point. That's not the point. What's your point? My point is, what's the point of arguing? Point is a really common word in everyday conversational English, especially when we're explaining ideas, agreeing with someone or disagreeing with someone, or trying to get to the main idea of a conversation. Have you ever been confused by all these different uses of point? If so, you're in luck, because today we're going to look at how you can use point naturally in everyday English conversation.
Welcome to another Happy English podcast coming to you from New York City. And here's your English teacher, Michael.
All right, thank you, John, and thanks, everyone. It's Michael here from Happy English, and I help people speak English better. And this is Happy English Podcast, episode 1085. What's the point? How to use point in everyday conversation. And by the way, if you're enjoying learning English with me, make sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss new episodes. Let's start with one of the most useful expressions, good point. We say good point when someone says something that we think is reasonable, important, or worth considering. For example, imagine you and a friend are planning a road trip. You suggest leaving at 8 in the morning, but your friend says if we leave at 8, we'll probably hit a lot of traffic. You could reply, good point. Let's leave earlier. You're saying, that's a good idea, or that's something important to consider. Here's another example. Imagine you're thinking about buying a new laptop because your current one feels a little slow. And your friend says, before you buy a new one, maybe you should check whether you can add more memory to yours. You could reply, good point, I didn't think about that. Or maybe your coworker says, we should probably ask the client before we change the schedule. You could reply, good point. In all of these situations, you're acknowledging that the other person has said something useful. A very similar expression is, you have a point. This also means that someone's idea is reasonable or valid. For example, your friend says, I know that restaurant is expensive, but the portions are huge. You might say, yeah, you have a point. We could probably share one dish. Or maybe someone says, I think it's better to leave early than risk missing the train. You could reply, yeah, you have a point there. This expression can sound slightly more thoughtful than good point. Almost like you're admitting, okay, I see the logic in what you're saying. Next, let's look at that's the point. We use that's the point when we want to emphasize the main idea or purpose. It's like when one of my students says, this exercise is really difficult. I usually reply, that's the point. It's supposed to challenge you. The difficulty is not a problem, it's the purpose. Or maybe your friend complains, this jacket is really bright. Everyone will notice me. You could say, that's the point. The whole purpose of the jacket is to stand out. Here's another situation. Your friend says, why are we leaving so early? The concert doesn't start for 2 hours. You reply, that's the point. I don't want to get stuck in traffic. You're saying that the reason for leaving early is exactly to avoid that problem. The opposite expression is, that's not the point. We use this when someone focuses on the wrong detail and we want to bring the conversation back to the real issue. For example, imagine you're upset because your roommate forgot to lock the door. And they say, but nothing was stolen. You could reply, that's not the point. The point is we need to lock the door every time we leave. You're saying the main issue is safety, not whether something bad happened this time. Or imagine someone arrives 30 minutes late and says, "Oh, but the meeting hasn't started yet." You might say, "That's not the point. You said you'd be here at 9." In this case, the real issue is keeping a promise or respecting the agreed time. And notice how naturally "the point is" works when you want to explain the main idea. For example, "The point is we need to decide today." Or, "The point is it's not about money, it's about trust." Or maybe someone keeps asking about small details and you say, "The point is we just need a plan that works for everyone." We also say, "My point is," when we want to clearly state our own main idea. Imagine you're talking about exercise and someone says, "But I don't have time to go to the gym every day." You might say, "My point is you don't have to go every day. Even 20 minutes a few times a week can help." You're clarifying what you really mean. Here's another example. You're discussing whether to buy a cheaper product, and you say, "My point is, if we buy the cheapest one now and it breaks in 6 months, we may end up spending more money later." Or maybe your friend thinks you're criticizing them and you say, "Look, my point is I'm trying to help. I'm not saying you did anything wrong." "My point is" helps you bring the conversation back to what you really want to communicate. And finally, we have "what's the point of?" We use this when we question whether something is useful, necessary, or worth doing. For example, "What's the point of arguing? Neither of us is going to change our mind." Or, "What's the point of buying a new phone if your old one still works perfectly?" Or maybe you're looking at a huge instruction manual and say, "What's the point of making this so complicated?" This expression often has the feeling that the action seems useless or unnecessary. So here's your challenge. Think of a conversation you had recently. Did someone make a good point? Was there a moment when you wanted to say, "That's not my point"? Then try making a sentence with "my point is," and another with "what's the point of?" For example, "My point is we should make a decision now." Or, "What's the point about worrying about tomorrow?" Try to make a few sentences with "point" that are true for you in your world. Because as you know, the best way to remember English like this and any other word or phrase is to take that word or phrase, write it in a sentence that's true for you or true in your world, and then memorize your sentences. Hey, thanks for listening. And remember, learning another language is not easy, but it's not impossible. And I'm here to help you on your journey.
This podcast was brought to you by Happy English. Please visit myhappyenglish.com. Show your support for Happy English by leaving us a review. Get English, get happy, Happy English.